I showed up in a small Australian town, knowing nobody. And by the end of the week, I had friends from 8 different countries. And my dog had stolen someone's lunch. I'm Yuki, a digital nomad and content creator travelling Australia full-time in a caravan with my dog Smiggle. I share stories about what this country is actually like. The real towns, the real people, the things you won't find in a guidebook. If you have ever wondered what life in Australia is really like, this channel is for you. This is how it happened. I drove into Griffith on a Tuesday morning in late February, when the light was already doing what inland light does, pressing down flat and bright on everything it touches. The road in from the west had been that particular combination of dead straight and endless, the kind where you start to feel like you might be driving on a treadmill, and then suddenly a water tower appears, and a town materializes around it, and you are somewhere new. Smiggle knew before I did. He had been asleep on his folded blanket on the passenger seat, but somewhere around the first roundabout, he sat up and started working through the window air with his nose, that rapid, purposeful sniffing that means he has information. I didn't know what he was reading out there. Maybe the orange trees. Maybe the particular combination of warm fruit and hot bitumen that was coming off everything that time of year. Griffith at harvest time is a different town from Griffith at any other time. And even Smiggle seemed to understand that something was happening here. I pulled off Banner Avenue and found a spot to park the van. Griffith doesn't ease you in. It just starts. That was my first impression. The main street was already busy in the way towns only get busy when there is something happening. A kind of organised motion, utes with people leaning on them, purposeful look that outdoor workers have at the start of a long day. I had arrived at harvest time. And harvest time, I was starting to understand, is less a calendar entry and more a state of collective emergency. A beautiful one, but still. I had come here half thinking I might get a few days of picking work, some extra cash for the road. I had done harvest work before, once in the Barossa and once near Orange, and there is something I genuinely like about it. Being outside all day, using your body, the kind of tired you feel at the end of it, that is different from any other kind of tired. Good tired. The orange orchards went on in every direction past the edge of town, row after row, and the air smelled of citrus even in the middle of the main street. I found a bakery, Italian of course, bought a coffee and a small pastry I could not name, but ate very gratefully and started to get a feel for the place. Smiggle had waited excitedly while I drank my coffee. He had arranged himself against my shin in that way he does when he is being patient, but wants me to know there are better uses of our time. When I finally clipped his lead on and we walked out into the street, he immediately had a direction in mind. Not an investigating direction, the nose to the ground wandering kind. A purposeful direction. Head up, pulling left. I have stopped trying to redirect him when he is like this. The first few months on the road, I would try to steer us where I thought we should go, and he would cooperate in the most frustrating way possible, walking just wrong enough to make us both miserable until I gave in. Now I just go where he goes. It is a better arrangement for everyone. He pulled us down a side street, past a truck being loaded with empty bins, past 2 men arguing quietly and cheerfully in Italian near a gate, and along a wire fence where the orange trees started. He was not interested in the trees, which surprised me. He was interested in something further along, around the side of what I realised was a winery building, somewhere past the shade of a big peppercorn tree. She was sitting on an upturned crate in the shadow of the building, in full work gear despite the heat, sleeves down, a bandana around her neck, boots that had seen serious use, early 20s maybe. She had a water bottle and she was eating an apple and looking at her phone with the expression of someone in the brief mercy of a break. Smiggle sat down in front of her and waited. She looked up from her phone and looked at him for a moment, and then she laughed. A short, surprised laugh that meant she hadn't heard us coming, and he had startled her. "Hello," she said to him, not to me. "Sorry," I said. "He just comes and sits in front of people sometimes." "No, it's fine," she said. "He's cute." She put her hand out and Smiggle leaned into it with the confidence of a dog who has never experienced rejection. Her name was Caitlin. She was working the harvest, had been at it for 3 weeks, was here for 2 more. From Ballarat originally. She had the cheerful, weathered look of someone who has been outside every day and stopped thinking about it. She asked me what I was doing here, and when I said I was travelling with the van, doing some work along the way, she nodded like that was a reasonable explanation for a person to give. "You should talk to Tom," she said. "He's the farmer, just over the creek. He'd probably have something for you if you're looking for work." She said it casually, the way people here seem to offer things, not as a favour so much as a practical observation. Then she added, "And his crew are good fun. Worth knowing." Tom was exactly where Caitlin said he would be, which was in an iron shed behind the fruit shed, working on a tractor engine that showed no signs of wanting to cooperate. He was 40s, tall, and lean in the way farmers often are. The kind of lean that is not intentional, but is the natural result of the work. He had that quality some people have of managing their face very carefully, not unfriendly, but not open either. He shook my hand and said his name, and didn't make a big thing of Smiggle, which Smiggle actually didn't mind. Some people who don't make a fuss over him, he finds more interesting than the ones who do. I told him Caitlin had sent me. He looked at me for a moment and then said he might have a few days of picking if I didn't mind early starts and wasn't precious about the heat. I said I wasn't. He said we'd see about that. We talked for a while in that direct, practical way people around here talk. He had been on this orchard for 11 years, since he was in his early 30s. Before that, he had been in finance in Melbourne. He said it like he was describing someone else's life, briefly and without drama. The citrus orchard had belonged to a family who had put it on the market, and he had bought it with less certainty than he probably should have had. And here he was, still here. He said that last part with something that was almost a smile, like the punchline was on him and he had made peace with that. I started picking the next morning. Tom was not lying about the early starts, 4:45. The air still holding a kind of darkness that hadn't fully given up. But here is the thing about turning up somewhere new at 4:45 in the morning. You find out very quickly who the people are. The picking crew was 8 of us that week. Caitlin I already knew. Then there was Marco, who was Italian-Australian and from Griffith itself and who knew everyone and everything and had opinions on all of it. A German backpacker named Lena, who had been in Australia for 5 months and had picked everything from strawberries in Queensland to cherries in Victoria and was keeping a running tally in a notebook. 2 guys from Taiwan whose English was good and who between them had a comedy routine that had everyone laughing within the first hour without any of us being entirely sure how it had happened. And a few others, all from different places, all ending up in the same orange rose at the same early hour for the same loose collection of reasons. By 7 in the morning, we were talking like we had known each other for weeks. If you want to come along for the rest of this one, make sure you're subscribed to Easy Australian English. Smiggle and I aren't going anywhere just yet. I have thought about this since, about why that kind of work brings people together so quickly, and I think it is because there is nowhere to hide. You are all there in the sun doing the same thing with your hands, and the conversation just happens around it. Nobody is performing anything. You are just people in a row of orange trees at sunrise, and that turns out to be a surprisingly good place to make friends. My father came to Australia knowing almost nobody, and he has told me before that the fastest friendships he made in those early years were the ones made while doing something physical alongside someone. I thought about that in the rose, about how that might be a particularly Australian thing, or maybe just a human thing that Australia does well. The unexpected thing happened on the second afternoon. Tom knocked off early, which nobody had seen coming, and he appeared at the end of the row with a cooler box. Cold drinks, mid-afternoon in 38 degrees. The whole crew came to the end of the row. Marco made a noise that could only be described as delighted. Tom handed out drinks with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times and didn't need to make a ceremony of it. And then he leaned against the fence post, and someone told a story. And he laughed, really laughed, and the version of Tom I had met the day before in the shed, careful and contained, turned out to have a completely different version underneath it. He was dry and quick, and he had clearly heard everything over 11 years and found most of it funny. It was like watching someone take off a coat they had been wearing all day. Smiggle had been loose in the orchard most of the afternoon, which in hindsight I should not have allowed. He had identified Lena's backpack, which was sitting at the end of her row, as a target of interest. He had not done anything to it yet. He was just watching it. He had that very specific stillness he gets when he is thinking something through. The stillness that means he has a plan. Lena noticed him watching it. She watched him watching it. He took one step toward it, she said. "Don't you dare." He sat down immediately and looked in the other direction with the expression of a dog who has never had an impure thought in his life. The whole crew saw it, and the whole crew lost it. Even Tom. Smiggle looked genuinely confused about what was funny, which only made it funnier. We sat at the end of the row for a good while after that, in that loose, easy way a group of people sits when nobody is in a hurry and the light is going golden and everything feels uncomplicated. Marco told us about his nonno, who had come from Sicily in the 1950s and planted the first Italian fig trees in Griffith. And now there were fig trees all over the district, and half of them didn't even know where they came from. Lena told us about her notebook, about how she was writing down every different type of work she did in Australia, so she could look back on it one day and remember what it felt like to be 24 and doing everything for the first time. The two guys from Taiwan told us they were taking turns driving, and one of them was a much worse driver than the other, and they could not agree on which one. Tom listened to all of it from his fence post with his drink and said almost nothing, but he was smiling in the way people smile when they are exactly where they want to be. I have been to a lot of places in Australia now, and the thing that surprises me every time is how quickly people let you in. Not in a loud, performed way, just in the way Caitlin said, "You should talk to Tom," without knowing me. The way Tom handed out cold drinks without making a speech about it. The way a group of strangers from about 8 different countries ended up at the end of an orange row at golden hour, laughing about a dog. There is something about this country, especially outside the cities, that just does that. It makes room. You do not have to earn it particularly. You just have to show up and be willing. And it happens. On my last morning, Tom paid me in cash, which I had expected, and then he walked me back through the orchard to where I had parked the van. I hadn't asked him to. He just came. Smiggle was already at the van by the time we got there, having run ahead with the confidence of a dog who knows when departures are coming. Tom and I shook hands. He said I was a good picker, which is about the most straightforward compliment anyone has ever paid me, and I thanked him for the work and meant it. Then Smiggle, who had been sitting patiently between us, leaned over and put his front paw on Tom's boot. Not because he wanted something. He just put it there. Tom looked down at him for a moment. Then he reached down and scratched him behind the ear, properly. The way you scratch a dog when you mean it. "Good dog," he said. "He really is," I said. Caitlin appeared around the side of the van with a bag for the road, 2 oranges from the orchard, and a piece of the sourdough from the Italian bakery on the main street. She handed it over like it was completely normal to do that for someone you had known for 3 days, which I suppose in Griffith it was. I always do the same things when I am getting ready to leave somewhere. Fill the water tank if I can. Check the caravan hitch. Make sure everything is secure for when we hit the road. Smiggle's contribution to this process is to position himself somewhere that guarantees I will trip over him at least once, and he has never yet failed to deliver on this. This time, he had settled directly in front of the water tap, which was a new low even for him. I did the checks, ate one of the oranges, which was genuinely the best orange I have ever eaten in my life, and I say that as someone who has eaten a lot of oranges, and got the van ready to move. I left Griffith heading north, which wasn't necessarily where I had planned to go, but the road went that way, and I didn't have a strong argument against it. The orchards gave way to flat country, and then more flat country, and the sky opened out the way it does when there is nothing left to interrupt it. Smiggle went back to sleep somewhere around the second roundabout out of town. I was thinking about Lena's notebook, about her writing everything down so she would remember what it felt like. I understood that. Some weeks you want to keep. Griffith gave me something I hadn't been looking for when I pulled off Banner Avenue with a vague plan to earn a bit of cash. It gave me Caitlin on a crate with an apple, Marco and his nonno's fig trees, Lena's notebook, 2 guys from Taiwan who could not agree on who was the better driver, Tom at the end of a row with a cooler box laughing, and the particular orange light of an inland afternoon and cold drinks, and nobody in a hurry to be anywhere else. If you ever find yourself in Australia with a few free days and no fixed plan, I would say this: look for the harvest. Find where the work is. Show up and be willing. The people you meet there might be the best part of the whole trip. Subscribe to Easy Australian English for real Australian stories and come along wherever Smiggle takes us next. Leave a comment below. What do you want to do in Australia? Where should Yuki and Smiggle go next?